And Mark, it's time to end the podcast doing something that, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, we were going to do this like 2 or 3 weeks ago and kind of tack it on to a preview, but then we were like, it was supposed to be the AFC West one. Then you weren't in. We did it over the phone. I'm like, well, I want to do this as a video. Then the week after, I'm like, you know what? Let's just push it another week. Because what's the point of tagging it on when we have this kind of buffer week between the previews and our predictions? So we're going through the top 10 to our preseason mock draft. Going to go through the picks, kind of talk a little bit about what we expect from this group of guys coming in. And how we do it is, first off, the draft order is a little different. We did not come up with this draft order. This was through tankathon.com. So if you're mad that your team is number one, looking at you, New York, don't be mad at us. Be mad at Tankathon.
Not our fault.
Let's get right to it. Let's just go through it. You'll give yours. Cool. I'll give mine. Then we'll talk about the picks. Give your 1 through 10.
All right. Got it on the phone, so don't think I'm texting. Number 1, Jets, going with Nick Bosa, defensive end, Ohio State, the Ohio State University. The Browns got number 2 overall. Rashawn Gary? What do I got there? Rashawn Is it Gary or Gray?
I think it's Gray.
Okay, because I really want it to be Gary. Because that would make me so happy if his last name was Gary. Rashawn Gray, defensive line, Michigan. Bengals, Greg Little, the offensive tackle out of Ole Miss. We got the Colts going with Jonah Williams, another tackle, Alabama. Dolphins getting Ed Oliver, going on the defensive line from Houston. Cardinals going with A.J. Brown, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. The Bears somehow traded up this high from number 32 overall. Trey Adams, the tackle from Washington.
Is that a Super Bowl joke?
That's right. Bears win the Super Bowl. The Giants then going with Justin Herbert, quarterback out of Oregon. Because it's got to be one. There's got to be a quarterback. The Bills then going with Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle out of Clemson. And the Bucks with Clelin Ferrell, defensive end out of Clemson.
Well, and then going right into mine, starting off the Jets. They're going to do the same thing you had them doing, and they're going to go with Nick Bosa out of the Ohio State University. Then the Browns going to go with Ed Oliver, the DT from the Houston Cougars. Then the Bengals going Jonah Williams, the tackle from Roll Tide, Alabama. The Colts going with Greedy Williams, the cornerback from LSU. Dolphins going to go wide receiver and go grab themselves Deebo Samuel out of South Carolina, get themselves a Gamecock. Then the Cardinals going to go with Clelin Ferrell, the DE out of Clemson. Bears going to go and protect Mitch Trubisky, get Greg Little, the tackle from Ole Miss. Then the Giants, they're going to go with Rashawn Gray, the DE from Michigan. The Bills going with Dexter Lawrence, another defensive lineman, this time from Clemson. And then the Bucks going to take Trey Adams, the offensive lineman from the Washington Huskies. And the thing you'll notice about mine, Mark, that's different from yours, is I don't have a quarterback in my top 10. The thing that I want to ask you is I looked at this group of quarterbacks that we could potentially have coming into this draft. And I feel like this could be the first time since I want to say the 2013 draft. I'll have to look into that. There was a draft class recently where we didn't have a spectacular quarterback class.
Yeah.
What are your kind of early thoughts with this quarterback class since you only had one and it's Justin Herbert from Oregon?
Yeah, I do like Justin Herbert. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think that he's a very interesting, I'll use offensive weapon, kind of is the way to say it. And the other thing to think about, too, is, you know, he is young and all that, so that there's kind of that component to it. But the offensive, or the quarterback class for this one, it's a little weak at the moment. None of these guys, besides, like I said, I like Justin Herbert, none of these other guys really stand out to me as here's the guy. You know, this is the one that's going to make some waves. What we really need right now is we need a Mitch Trubisky to come out there and, even though he's never played, has one season, goes out there and lights it up. You know, we need one of that. We need when you have the surprise transfer or the red shirt that nobody knew about. Well, red shirts don't work because they can't get drafted next year. But we need somebody.
Unless it's like Jameis Winston and he was a redshirt sophomore.
That's true. That could happen. So I guess we do have a few that could happen. But Jameis is another good example of that guy who can come out there, surprise the world, and like, hey, who's this guy? we need to have one of those this coming season. But the flip side of it, I mean, this is, of course, not the actual order, but you look at stuff like the Jets, the Browns, they just grabbed their quarterback.
Yeah, they grabbed them.
The Colts, they got Andrew Luck. The Bengals are maybe the only ones, with maybe the Dolphins in there too, that could maybe go get a quarterback besides the Giants like I had them do. There's not very many teams that are going to probably be in the top 10 that are going to need quarterbacks anyways.
Yeah.
So it kind of works out for there to not be very many available that are worth taking when really it doesn't matter because none of those teams need them anyways.
And I mean, the thing, I was right on the draft class, by the way. Like, the way I'm looking at the 2019 draft class at this point, and of course we've got an entire season to go. There could be a quarterback that comes out, makes his name known. Like, the sum that people are looking at is Drew Lock is apparently the favorite right now. I'm not really in love with Drew Lock, the quarterback from Missouri, but Mel Kiper said Lock and then who you have and Justin Herbert are the only ones that would have first-round grades. Other than that, people are excited about, like, what are we going to get from Jarrett Stidham, the quarterback who's going to be, I think he's a junior at Auburn. What are we going to get from Shea Patterson? He's that surprise transfer that you're talking about going over to Michigan. Will Greer, the senior, who's going to be with the West Virginia Mountaineers this year, and the guy who could kind of be like that Mitch Trubisky, I know is from the ACC, so it kind of fits, is maybe like a Ryan Finley or a guy like Nick Fitzgerald, where these guys started last year, but then having that second year as a starter because Mitch had the 2 years before he was drafted. I just think we're going to get another year kind of like 2013.
He only had the one season, Mitch Trubisky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to get the 2013 season of, like, if I just go through the top 10 picks positional-wise, offensive tackle, DE, offensive tackle, DE, guard, running back, cornerback, guard. The first quarterback taken was 16th overall from Florida State, E.J. Manuel by the Bills.
Yeah.
The next guy after
How did that work out?
Geno Smith was the next quarterback taken.
How did that work out?
Mike Glennon by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
How did that one work out?
The next one, Matt Barkley by the Eagles.
God, I can just keep
Ryan
doing it.
Nassib by the Giants.
Keep going.
Tyler Wilson by the Raiders. Landry Jones by the Steelers. At least he's still with the team that drafted him from 2013. And then if I scroll down...
Although maybe not for long because of Mason Rudolph.
And then Landry Jones was not the last one. You had Brad Sorensen, Zach Desert, B.J. Daniels, Sean Renfrey were the quarterbacks taken, all the quarterbacks taken in 2013. And that's kind of what I'm sitting at, thinking of what we're going to have, where on the other side of it, it's going to be interesting to see. Usually we see a draft like the Andrew Luck RG3, the Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, the Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, where it's quarterback. This year, it looks like it's going to be, which defensive lineman do you want? Do you want the edge rusher and Nick Bosa, the baby constrictor, or do you want to go with Ed Oliver, who will be an inside lineman on the defensive line for the Houston Cougars? There's some mock drafts that had Oliver first, but I just like Nick Bosa and what he brings to the table.
I like Nick Bosa a lot, too. Very explosive player that can do essentially what his brother's doing. Can just kind of take that defense to the next level.
I would not be upset if the Chargers had, like, injuries this year and were the first pick so that they can have Bosa on the outside.
That would be...
It's not going to happen.
That would be quite a phenomenon if one team, managed to draft both those brothers that high. That'd be impressive. But the thing is, you mentioned the defensive tackles, defensive ends, and offensive tackles. There's a lot of really talented linemen kind of right up at the top. Yeah. And it further cements this,
Are you talking defensive or offensive
both
linemen? Okay.
It further cements right now that...
Much like 2013, we had the same thing.
Yeah, that's how you win in the NFL, with pass rushing ability and by and then the flip side of that is protecting your damn quarterback. Yeah. If you can't do both of those things, you're probably not going to get that far into the play. You're probably not going to make the playoffs, but you probably won't go that far in the playoffs if you can't protect your quarterback and put pressure on the other one.
Like, I mean, I'm looking right now at, I'm using Mel Kiper's positional rankings. This is just the underclassmen that we can get from the defensive end side of the ball. Nick Bosa, Rashawn Gray, Clelin Ferrell, who is in both of our, like, these players are scattered around our top 10. And then a guy I didn't even mention from Alabama, Raekwon Davis. Like, he's a guy that's going to be good. You got Joe Jackson from Miami. Kristen Wilkins, he's an underclassman that's going to be at Clemson this year, to where I feel like defensively, this is going to be a defensive draft to where it's like people are just going to go, screw it. Like, hey, we don't necessarily need to take one of these quarterbacks because the draft isn't that strong. We're going to go ahead and get one of these defensive guys or get one of the offensive guys like Jonah Williams, Greg Little. Get one of these guys like an Adams who can come out and be a kind of, hey, we got to protect the quarterback. That's like with the Bears, why I had them, both of us had them go offensive linemen.
Yeah.
But that was an easy pick for me. Like them, the Buccaneers, depending on what happens with Jameis, the Bengals, it's like, hey, you know what? We got to protect our quarterbacks a little bit.
And, you know, you look at some of these teams up top, you mentioned it too, but, you know, the glaring flaw, I'd say, for the Bengals is that offensive line. They can go get it. A glaring issue for the Chicago Bears, once again, offensive line. They got to protect that quarterback.
Unless they just see a defensive guy that they're like, screw it, we can get that later.
We need this type of guy. You know, so many of these teams really need that. You know, the Dolphins have some defensive line that they can replace. They lost a little bit of that.
Yeah.
You know, you look into the Cardinals, they've got a young rookie quarterback. The Bills, a young rookie quarterback. And the Bills lost quite a bit on that offensive line. They are teams that need that. They are teams that can't wait to have a chance to get one of these guys. And you have some really solid options here of people who, as it stands right now, should be able to become, you know, kind of those very stable guys, like a, you know, Little out of Ole Miss. He's going to be one that's going to be solid. I really like I really like Adams out of Washington as just those guys who you can draft and you can say, kind of like what we were thinking with Quentin Nelson, only that's a guard instead of a tackle of.
Yeah.
Just put him there, and he will be there for the next decade.
Exactly. Or kind of like, I'm trying to think, wasn't there another offensive lineman from this past draft that was along with Nelson that it was like, I'm thinking McGlinchey. He wasn't like that. He was going to be a little bit of a faller. But, I mean, yeah, these offensive linemen, I think that this draft is going to be... It's going to be interesting to see where teams fall because obviously this isn't for sure locked and loaded at the top 10. But, I mean, even thinking from around the NFL, like what teams really are going to need a quarterback next year? Like really need a quarterback where it's like
if somebody retires, you know, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Is there anyone that kind of
Drew Brees could? You know, Big Ben could, but they've got somebody back there already.
Big Ben will be interesting, but they just drafted Mason Rudolph.
The only reason I could see Drew Brees retiring is because that team is really good. They could maybe win a Super Bowl and Drew can just walk off into the sunset.
Saints fans are like, stop, Mark. Stop. We don't need that. Don't give us that.
Hey, you get a Super Bowl.
Don't give us that juju.
You get a Super Bowl.
But you lose Drew Brees.
You get a Super Bowl.
Now I'm trying to look at like what
the Giants, you know, if they for some reason want to move on from Eli, you know, maybe Shermer's really just like, I just got to get somebody else. And I think I found my guy.
No, I feel like there's not a lot of teams that are going to need quarterbacks. The rate, they took Lamar Jackson. They wouldn't ditch him after a year. But
Dolphins are up there, but I think that they still have a few more years of testing Tannehill because they gave him a deal.
Or the Bills, depending on how the Josh Allen plays out.
The Bills would have to be like number one overall to pass on Allen right now.
I mean, the point is there's not many teams that are like, man, we really need a quarterback after how many of them got quarterbacks in this past draft. The kind of one of the last things that I'm kind of thinking about for this one is the wide receivers. I find it funny that both of us had one wide receiver. You elected to go A.J. Brown, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss, who had 13 touchdowns last year in college football, had 1,664 yards. I opted to go with Deebo Samuel, who is going to be the wide receiver for the Gamecocks this year, just around almost 12,000 or 1,200, 1,200 receiving yards last year, 5 touchdowns, so not as many as A.J. Brown. However, the thing I like is your fit, where the Cardinals, if they're a top 10 team, I could see them being a team where it's like, screw it, we got to get one of these wide receivers.
Yeah.
Because Larry Fitzgerald is a guy that will most likely be walking at the end of this year. This is Larry's last
a good
ride.
replacement. Yeah, this is a good replacement of that guy who can be explosive, who is going to get you some touchdowns. Great connection with your new quarterback, Josh Rosen. I mean, that would be an awesome combination, an awesome weapon. I would love to see that happen for the Arizona Cardinals.
And I mean, with me too, I would have had the Cardinals go with the wide receiver if I didn't have the Dolphins go with them. And the Dolphins, to me, could be a team where they could go defense and they could go offensive line. But I think at the end of the year, I was trying to put my mindset into Adam Gase, into that front office, and I'm thinking, all right, we just gave up Jarvis Landry. The wide receivers I was looking at, I'm like, you know what, at the end of the year, these aren't the wide receivers that are going to win you many games. We got to go out and get somebody who can be a quality not a quality, that sounds like I'm throwing shade at the wide receivers the Dolphins have, but we got to go out and get a guy who could be what Jarvis Landry was to us since they traded him to the Browns. But this draft is going to be very interesting with what we see this year, especially for me. I'm going to go back to it, the quarterbacks and what we see from them, because each and every draft class is kind of driven by the quarterbacks and everything else kind of falls into it. This is going to be one, though, that'll most likely be driven by the defensive players that we see out there, as I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of my 10 are defensive players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, we both have half of the picks are defensive picks.
And that really kind of goes with what we're saying of it's pretty balanced in, especially with those linemen, but there's some other talented players as well. You know, I have quarterback, we both have wide receivers.
Yeah.
So, but it's pretty evenly split of what's out there, and you know, the teams at the beginning are going to be pretty happy. But the flip side of it too is we got a whole college football season left to go before this happens, and some of these people in here, they might not go. They might still stick around for another year or something like that. You know, who knows?
And then the one thing I will say kind of to wrap this up is we are going to have, I can't wait for draft season this year. We're going to have our mock draft starting really soon. I don't know the exact date, but around mid-season is when we're actually going to put out our first mock draft for the
not
year.
Way too early, but still too early mock draft.
Yeah, Mark's like, that's still too early for me. Let's pump it down. Where I'm like, hey, you know what? Mid-season, kind of see where the order's at, and then get into the same rotation we were in last year. But I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. Let us know what you guys think. Who would you guys have for these picks for these teams? Who are you guys excited about? I know this upcoming Monday, Brandon and I are going to take these players, take the teams out of it, and just do our first big board top 10 for the college football season in general. So you guys get some double draft topics to start the football season, as college football season's coming up. The NFL season is inching closer and closer as we're week 2 in preseason for the NFL. I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. Housekeeping here at the end. Make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluable podcast. That's where you can help support the channel, and you can join a podcast each and every month. You're at the $10 tier, and we talk about what you want to talk about. You can also check out the shirt down below in the description in the shop. That shop also at mostvaluablepodcast.com, where you can catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, if you're on iTunes, if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure to give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating. If you're on YouTube, go over to your iTunes. I know you have your iPhone. It's sitting right next to you. Pick it up, type in the Onside Kick into your Apple Podcast app. Give us a 5-star rating. Tell us why you like listening to the podcast. It would really help us out. I want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. I want to thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.